I'm Clay Thompson, 36 years old, single dad, and barely scraping by on the edge of Little Pines, a quiet backwoods town tucked into the Tennessee hills. Folks say it's a place where nothing much happens, but truth is, life here can change in a heartbeat. Mine sure did. Before all this, I was Staff Sergeant Thompson with the 82nd Airborne Division. Grease under my fingernails, clipboard in my hand, and a battalion of diesel engines to keep running smooth. I was proud of my work. Fixing machines meant something. But that chapter ended the day my wife, Lena, lost her battle with cancer. She was 32, bright-eyed high school biology teacher, adored by her students, loved even more by me. We'd known each other since sophomore year, high school sweethearts turned soulmates. She was tired all the time after our son, Jesse, was born. We chalked it up to new parent exhaustion. But when she finally went to the doctor, it was already stage 4. The kind that spreads fast and hits harder than any roadside IED ever could. She fought for 11 months. Bravest woman I've ever known. But I knew, deep down, that I was going to be raising our boy on my own. After her funeral, I walked into my CO's office and turned in my papers. Couldn't be a soldier and a dad at the same time. Not the kind of dad Jesse needed, anyway. The Army let me go with a handshake and a plaque for my 10 years of service. That plaque still hangs crooked above our kitchen sink, right next to the leaky faucet I've never had the money to fix. Now I make a living the best way I can. Fixing tractors for farmers, welding broken gates, delivering propane tanks for a gas company that pays me under the table. Not exactly the American dream, but it keeps food on our plates most months. Jesse's 5 now. Bright kid, sweet as cornbread, always asking questions about the stars and the way engines work. He's the reason I keep going. That day was like any other. We just finished a delivery run for Barney's Hardware, and I had Jesse strapped into his booster seat with a juice box in hand. The sun was ducking behind a bank of clouds, and I was already thinking about the macaroni we were gonna make for dinner. That's when I saw the truck, old, beat-up Dodge, sitting half-slumped in a ditch on the side of County Road 4. It popped, steam hissing, one tire hanging just a little too low like it was nursing a sprain. I pulled over without even thinking. Army habits die hard. You see someone in trouble, you help. That's just what you do. The man behind the wheel looked to be in his 70s, lean and wiry, with a weathered face like he'd been carved from oak. Mud on his jacket, boots caked in dried clay. Didn't say a word as I walked up with my toolkit in hand, just nodded once and stepped aside. I can take a look if you don't mind, I said. Still nothing. Just a small grunt, maybe a shrug. Some folks out here ain't big on words. So I got to work. Jesse sat in the cab of our old Chevy, watching me through the open window like I was building a rocket ship. Made me feel like a hero. Battery terminals were shot, corroded to hell, and the timing belt was slipping just enough to throw off the ignition. Nothing I couldn't handle, just took some elbow grease and patience. As I worked, I felt the old man's eyes on me. Not in that desperate, panicked way you see when someone's stranded. His look was calculating, calm, like he was measuring me. About halfway through, my neighbor Carl rolled by. Slowed his truck just long enough to shout, "Hey Clay, maybe you should fix that busted roof of yours before you go play roadside mechanic." Then he laughed. One of those mean laughs that sticks to your skin. I didn't answer. Just kept working. 40 minutes later, I had the engine humming again. She idled smooth, like she hadn't just coughed her way into a ditch. The old man didn't offer a handshake or cash. He just looked at me and said, "You didn't ask who I was, but I won't forget who you are." Then he climbed into his truck and drove off like ghosts were chasing him. That night, Jesse asked me if I knew the man. No, I told him, just someone who needed help. That's how I was raised. You help someone not cause of who they are, but cause it's the right thing to do. My first sergeant told me that during basic, and it's stuck ever since. I stayed up late after Jesse fell asleep, flipping through bills by the kitchen light. Electric bill past due. Rent coming up. I considered calling my sister up in Kansas City for help, but my pride kept me still. I'd already borrowed from her after Lena passed. I wasn't about to beg again. Eventually, I fell asleep on the couch, with the sound of cicadas buzzing through the cracked window. I didn't know it then, but that roadside stop was about to change everything. Next morning started like most. Pancakes on the griddle, Jesse still rubbing sleep out of his eyes, sunlight creeping through the crooked blinds. We were halfway through breakfast. He was dunking banana slices in syrup, making a sticky mess of the table, when the sound of honking broke the quiet. Long, deliberate honks. Not the impatient beep-beep of a neighbor late for church. This was different. Purposeful. Jesse perked up instantly, syrup still clinging to his fingers. "Daddy," he said, eyes wide, "somebody's outside." I walked to the front window, wiping my hands on a dish towel. Then I froze. 3 black SUVs. Not your everyday county sheriff or utility company kind, either. These were polished, tinted, unmarked. Government issue. They were lined up in front of our rundown rental like a motorcade had taken a wrong turn into a forgotten part of Tennessee. Doors opened. Men in plain clothes stepped out clean-shaven, sharp-eyed, shoulders squared. The kind of folks who didn't need a badge to say they meant business. Military. I knew it before they even approached. You don't spend a decade in uniform without learning to read posture like a language. One stepped forward. Tall, clean-cut, maybe in his 40s. He flashed a leather folder that held his credentials like it was second nature. "Mr. Thompson?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "I'm Lieutenant Colonel Raymond Parks. We're from the Department of Military Outreach and Protection Services. Someone important would like to speak with you." My heart kicked up a notch. Not fear, just confusion. My VA paperwork was all in order. My benefits, modest as they were, never caused a fuss. So what the hell was this about? That's when the back door of the middle SUV opened. Out stepped a man I recognized instantly, even after all these years. Tall, silver-haired, eyes sharp enough to slice through steel. General Everett Langston, retired. Decorated combat commander, former Joint Operations Chief, and a legend in military maintenance logistics. I'd only seen him once in person, years ago during a base inspection. The kind of man people made room for without being told. He wasn't in uniform now, but that didn't matter. You don't shed that kind of presence just by taking off a jacket. I stood up straighter out of reflex. Some habits run deeper than muscle memory. "At ease, Sergeant Thompson," he said with a small smile. "I'm not here to inspect your lawn." I cracked a half-smile despite myself. "Sir," I replied, unsure what else to say. "Mind if we step inside?" he asked, glancing at the house. I hesitated for a second. The place wasn't much, paint peeling off the porch rail, toys scattered in the grass, a busted wind chime hanging crooked on the eaves. But I nodded and let him inside anyway. Jesse followed us with wide eyes, still holding a piece of pancake like it was some sort of totem. Langston crouched down to his level, offered a firm but kind handshake. "You must be Jesse," he said. "Your dad fixed my truck yesterday, and I owe him more than he knows." Jesse looked up at me, then back at the general, and just nodded solemnly, as if he understood something deep without needing words. I asked Jesse to head to his room and give us a minute. He didn't argue, just walked off with the sleepy obedience of a kid still full of syrup and curiosity. Langston followed me into the kitchen, where I offered him the cleanest seat I had. He sat like a man used to battlefield maps and negotiation tables, but with none of the arrogance I expected. "You didn't know who I was," he said, "when you stopped to help? That matters." I sat down slowly, every bone in my body waiting for the catch. "The truck you fixed," he continued, "it wasn't just any vehicle. I was carrying hard copy briefings for a new federal initiative, a program we're launching to support skilled veterans. People like you." I blinked. "Sir, I'm just a mechanic. A part-time delivery driver, really." Langston shook his head. "You're exactly who this country needs." He reached into a leather folder and pulled out a stack of papers. Clean, official, and very real. Salary numbers that looked like fantasy. Job details that sounded like something from a life I'd given up on years ago. "You're being offered a role in our Veteran Infrastructure Corps," he explained. "Training starts next month in Knoxville. You be home every weekend, and after 6 months, we place you where your skills make the most difference. It comes with housing support, full benefits, and educational credits for Jesse." I sat back, barely able to breathe. "You're offering me all this," I said slowly, "because I pulled over and fixed a stranger's truck?" Langston smiled faintly. "You didn't fix my truck," he said. "You helped a man because it was the right thing to do. You didn't hesitate, didn't ask who I was, and you didn't ask for a dime. We need that kind of integrity now more than ever." He stood, leaving the papers on the table. "Think about it, Sergeant. We'll need your answer in 48 hours. Bring your tools. First day's hands-on." Then he walked out the door like he'd just handed me a new life in a manila envelope. I sat there in stunned silence, watching the SUVs pull away, dust curling into the morning sky. Jesse came back into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Are we moving, Daddy?" I looked down at him. His little face was open, trusting, full of hope. "Maybe, Bud," I said softly. "Maybe." I didn't wait the full 48 hours. That same evening, After Jesse was tucked in and dreaming whatever 5-year-old boys dream about, dinosaurs, rocket ships, maybe pancake oceans, I sat back down at that kitchen table. The light above flickered every so often, casting the whole room in a jittery yellow. The envelope Langston left still sat in the middle of the table like it was daring me to open it again. I pulled it closer, reread everything, and then did something I hadn't done in a long time. I said a prayer. Not a long one. Just a whisper. "Lena," I said, eyes closed, "if you're out there, if this is right, give me the guts to say yes." I don't know what I expected in return. No thunderclap. No sign. But the house got real quiet in that moment. And somehow, I knew what she'd say. "Take it. You've earned this." So I called the number Langston gave me and confirmed my interest. A voice on the other end sounded like they'd been expecting my call. They emailed me the paperwork. Benefits breakdown, salary details, training dates. It was more than generous. It was life-changing. I signed it all electronically after Jesse fell asleep with his stuffed moose under one arm. The next few days were a blur. I gave notice at the shop, told Barney I couldn't do deliveries anymore. Packed what little we had. Clothes, tools, the photo box with pictures of Lena tucked inside. Jesse's favorite truck blanket. That was about it. We weren't leaving behind much, but somehow it still felt like closing a door I wasn't sure I'd ever reopen. Word got around fast, like it always does in small towns. On Friday, I was outside changing the oil in my old Silverado when Carl McAllister, my nosy, thorn-in-the-side neighbor, wandered over. He leaned on my mailbox, chewing something sticky and trying to look casual. "So," he said, "those black trucks that showed up the other day, that was the government, huh?" I kept working. "Yup. Heard some big-shot general offered you a job." Sounds like a fairy tale, Clay. That actually true. I twisted the wrench a little harder than I needed to. "Yup. Carl shifted his weight. Because you fixed his truck?" I looked up, wiping my hands on a rag. "No. Because I helped a man who needed it. Turns out, that matters." He squinted at me, his expression all tangled up between curiosity and the beginnings of respect. The same guy who'd laughed at me for helping a stranger now didn't seem to know what to do with the truth. "Well," he said eventually, "good for you, I guess." I smiled, mostly to myself. "Thanks, Carl." Guess was about the best you were going to get from Carl McAllister. I didn't need more. That Sunday, Jesse and I loaded up the truck. Our whole life fit into the back seat and a tarp-covered bed. As we pulled out of the driveway, I glanced at the sagging porch steps one last time. Funny how you can miss a place and still be glad to leave it behind. The next morning, we arrived in Knoxville for the program's orientation. The facility was sleek, modern, everything our rental back home wasn't. Jesse was bouncing with excitement just from the new scenery. I showed up at the regional office with my tool bag slung over my shoulder, nerves tugging at my gut. Inside, it looked more like a tech startup than anything military. Bright lights, polished floors, people who looked like they actually liked their jobs. A receptionist offered me coffee and handed me a badge with my name already printed on it. "Mr. Thompson," she said, "your assessment station is in Bay 3. Just follow the yellow arrows." I walked down a wide hallway lined with photos of veterans in uniforms, working on power lines, climbing cell towers, repairing water systems. Each image had a small caption underneath. Character first. Skill second. Bay 3 was a massive open garage filled with every kind of machinery you could think of. Diesel generators, water pumps, communication gear. Waiting at one station was a man about my age, bald with a sharp jawline and a clipboard in hand. He stuck out a hand as I approached. "Clay Thompson." "Yes, sir." "Name's Ellis. You'll be with me for the practical. Nothing crazy, just want to see how you think, how you work. We don't need robots. We need leaders." He gestured to a malfunctioning power relay on the table. "This system's down. No power. No tools except what you brought. Talk me through your approach." I took a deep breath, set my bag down, and got to work. Not just fixing it, but explaining every move. Diagnosis first, then step-by-step analysis. It was muscle memory, but I kept my voice steady, even as sweat prickled my neck. 20 minutes later, the relay hummed back to life. The test light blinked green. Ellis smiled and jotted something on his clipboard. "I've seen master techs with 15 years experience freeze on that setup," he said. "You didn't even blink." "Been fixing things most of my life," I replied. "Not just machines." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I read your file." I blinked. "You have my file?" "General Langston made sure we did. Said we'd be stupid not to." That afternoon, I was assigned to a team of 5 other veterans. One was a former Navy sonar tech. Another had been a Black Hawk mechanic. Different branches, different specialties, but all of us had the same fire in our eyes. Not desperation. Purpose. And that night, for the first time in years, I tucked Jesse into bed in a place where I didn't worry about the roof leaking or the power shutting off. He curled up in fresh sheets, looked up at me with that quiet little smile of his. "Are we gonna be okay now?" he whispered. I knelt beside the bed and brushed a curl off his forehead. "Yeah, bud," I said. "We're more than okay. We're finally where we're meant to be." Week 2 of training, and I already felt like I'd been there a month. My hands were sore from the daily assessments, generator breakdowns, hydraulic leak simulations, grid diagnostics, but the kind of sore that came with purpose. Every morning, I pulled on my boots with a sense of forward motion I hadn't felt since active duty. Our team, 6 of us, had clicked fast. There was Frankie, a wiry guy from Jersey who'd once overhauled an entire comms rig with a broken wrist. Then Marcus, ex-Air Force mechanic, quiet but sharp, always watching and taking mental notes. Eddie was the prankster, a Navy vet who could rewire a circuit panel blindfolded but once shocked himself trying to toast a bagel with a power inverter. Sarah, former Coast Guard, was the smartest of the bunch, no question, tough, fair, and able to spot a misaligned fuse from across the room. And then there was Jorge, ex-Marine, a bear of a man with a heart twice as big as his shoulders. We all came from different corners of life, different wars, different wounds. But we spoke the same language: oil, voltage, perseverance. At lunch, we'd swap stories over paper-wrapped sandwiches and strong coffee. Not the war stories, not yet. Mostly about the weird jobs we'd taken since the military. Eddie once cleaned koi ponds for a guy who swore the fish understood Spanish. Frankie sold roofing estimates door to door in a hurricane. Me? I told them about fixing lawnmowers for gas money and delivering propane tanks in the heat with Jesse strapped into the cab beside me, humming along to classic country. They listened. They got it. During downtime, we drilled on communication systems and power grid blueprints. They were prepping us to work in real-world crisis scenarios, hurricane zones, wildfire areas, places where lives could hang on whether a water pump fired up or a transformer rebooted. It wasn't just mechanical work. It was life support. One afternoon, after a long training rotation, General Langston stopped by the bay unannounced. Even out of uniform, the man carried a gravity that pulled everyone's spine a little straighter. He didn't make a speech. Didn't need to. He walked over to where I was reassembling a backup diesel pump and stood beside me, arms crossed. "You doing all right here, Thompson?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes, sir. Feels good to be useful again." Langston gave a small smile. "That's the idea." He clapped me on the shoulder, firm but not showy. "Just remember, it's not about the tools you hold. It's about the hands that hold them." I knew what he meant. You can teach someone to change a belt or fix a relay. But grit, humility, the instinct to do right by others, that couldn't be taught. That evening, back at our provided housing, nothing fancy, but clean and stable, I sat on the little front porch with Jesse. He was drawing superheroes on a pad of paper, and I was sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug. "You like it here, buddy?" I asked. He nodded without looking up. "They have dinosaurs on the playground." "Well," I said, "that's pretty hard to beat." Then Jesse got quiet. Looked up with that small, serious face he got from his mama. "Are you still gonna fix stuff forever?" he asked. "I reckon I will," I said. "Why?" He shrugged. "I just want you to fix stuff where people smile more." That one hit me in the gut. The next morning, the tone around base shifted. New protocols. Scrambled schedules. Apparently, a windstorm had knocked out power to a rural county in our east. Langston's voice came through the speaker in the training hall. "This is a real-world deployment. Assessment only. Team 3 will accompany field ops. Volunteers only." I raised my hand before he finished speaking. By sundown, I was in a convoy truck heading down Route 26 with Jorge, Sarah, and a senior supervisor named Milton. We were going to help assess down lines, check on relay nodes, and restore basic backup to the medical clinic out that way. When we arrived, the town was still dark. No traffic lights, no street lamps. Just the faint red glow of a weather radio flashing inside a convenience store window. We worked until midnight. Jorge hauled generators. Sarah diagnosed a blown switchboard. I climbed a pole I hadn't touched a rig since Afghanistan, and felt like I'd found a missing part of myself. The air smelled of pine and wet pavement, and when we finally got the clinic lights flickering back on, a nurse came out with tears in her eyes. "You just brought our incubator back online," she said. We've got a newborn inside. You might have saved a life tonight." I didn't know what to say. Just nodded, throat tight, heart hammering with something deeper than adrenaline. Back at base the next day, they called us into the main hall. Langston stood up front. Behind him was a large screen showing photos from the deployment, us in the field, dirt on our faces, wires in our hands. He tapped the microphone. "Last night, a team of 5 helped stabilize a clinic without waiting for orders or cameras. This is why this program exists. To remind this country what character looks like." He gestured toward us. "You are the front lines now. Not with weapons. With wrenches. And you may never know the lives you save, but save them, you will." That night, I tucked Jesse in with a story about a man who once fixed a machine that helped keep a baby breathing. "Was that you, Daddy?" he asked. I just smiled. It could have been any of us. A week after that field deployment, things had settled into a rhythm again. Early mornings, long shifts, sore muscles, and an odd sense of peace I hadn't known in years. Jesse had made a friend in the complex's daycare, a wide-eyed girl named Addie who wore mismatched socks and could already spell transmission. They shared peanut butter crackers and planned imaginary rocket launches during recess. I just finished realigning a turbine pump when Milton flagged me down with a clipboard. "You got a visitor," he said. I wiped my hands on a shop rag. "A visitor? Who even knows I'm here?" "Didn't say. But she's waiting at the admin office. Name's Erin." That name hit me like a steel wrench to the chest. Erin Parker. My sister. I hadn't seen her in almost 4 years. Not since Lena's funeral. When I walked into the office, she was sitting on a plastic chair by the vending machine, twisting a keychain between her fingers like it was a worry stone. Same auburn hair, same nervous bite of the lower lip. When she saw me, she stood too fast and nearly knocked over a bottle of water at her feet. "Clay," she said, voice trembling. "Erin," I said flatly. There was a long pause. Her eyes scanned me, taking in the grease-stained coveralls, the tired face I saw in the mirror every day. "You look good," she offered. "I look like I've been fixing broken things," I replied. "Which, tracks." She winced. "I deserve that." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Why are you here?" She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph creased at the corners, one I hadn't seen in over a decade. Me and Lena on our wedding day. Her in that soft blue dress. I was laughing at something she'd whispered. Erin must have snapped it when we weren't looking. "Mom's not well," she said softly. Her memory's slipping. Some days she remembers Lena's gone. Other days she asks if you're still in the army. I didn't say anything. Didn't know what to say. "She talks about Jesse," Erin continued. "Keeps a picture of him in her knitting bag, even though she's never met him." A long silence stretched between us. "I'm not asking you to forgive everything," Erin said. "But she asked to see you. And she doesn't have much time before even that slips away." My jaw clenched. Memories I'd buried started bubbling up. How they hadn't come to the funeral. How I'd begged them to write, to call, just once. How they left me to carry everything when Lena was sick and dying, alone except for Jesse and the weight of it all. "I'm not the same guy anymore," I said finally. "And I'm not sure what good it'll do for Jesse to meet people who walked away from us." Erin nodded slowly, pain flickering behind her eyes. "Maybe none. Or maybe you just let a little healing happen, even if it's late." She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a hospital address. Nothing else. She stood to leave, her voice barely a whisper as she walked past me. "You fix broken things, Clay. You always have. Just don't forget the things that broke you, too." She was gone before I could stop her. That night, I sat on the edge of Jesse's bed long after he'd fallen asleep, that photo of me and Lena in my hands. She would have told me to go, not out of guilt, not for them, but because grace isn't always about the people who failed you. Sometimes it's about proving to yourself that you didn't lose the part of you that still believes in mercy. The next morning, I requested a weekend pass. Langston approved it with a single look and no questions. "We all have missions," he said. "Some are just quieter than others." I drove to the hospital in Chattanooga 2 days later. It was a dull gray building tucked between a shuttered strip mall and a pharmacy. The kind of place where time moved like syrup. Erin met me at the front doors, eyes red but grateful. She led me to a small room with pale curtains and 2 mini beeping machines. Mom sat in a chair by the window, her shoulders thinner than I remembered, her hair now fully white. She looked up, confused at first, then her face changed. "Clay," she whispered. I nodded, lips pressed tight. "You're taller," she said, chuckling softly. "Or maybe I'm smaller." Her voice was raspy but warm. Jesse's name came up next, as if she'd been saving it. "I'd like to meet him," she said, "if it's not too late." We talked for 20 minutes. About nothing and everything. She cried. I didn't. I held her hand while she apologized for not being there, for being scared, for choosing silence when I needed family. And I realized something. I didn't need her to be perfect. I just needed her to care, even if it was years too late. As I left, Aaron hugged me for the first time in years. It didn't fix everything, but it didn't have to. Back in Knoxville, Jesse met me at the door with a drawing of a robot fixing a spaceship. "This one's you," he said proudly. "You're the robot. And you fixed the whole galaxy." I smiled and ruffled his hair. "Not the whole galaxy, bud," I said. "Just a couple pieces of it." 2 months into the program, Langston called me into his office. No preamble, just pointed to a chair across from his desk. "We've got a situation," he said, flipping open a folder. "Small Appalachian town, Summit Hollow. Power station's failing. They've got elderly, a rural hospital, and zero backup. They've requested help through our veteran initiative." I waited for the ask. "We want you to lead the response team," Langston continued. 3 techs, 1 rig, you drive." Me? I'd barely finished the core coursework. There were more experienced folks, guys who'd run shop floors and power crews for years. He must have seen the doubt on my face. "This isn't about years in the field," he said. "It's about leadership under pressure. We've seen how you work." I didn't argue, just nodded and stood. 2 days later, we were rolling into Summit Hollow. Me, Frankie, Sarah, and Jorge. The town looked like it had been frozen in time. Rusted storefronts, kids riding bikes down cracked pavement, and dead silence from the substation on the hill. We set up quick. The relay box was cooked, lightning damage, and the backup generator was a paperweight full of dust. I got under the hood while Sarah rerouted junction load. Frankie handled insulation checks. Jorge patched coolant lines. By dusk, we'd rigged a temp fix. Just enough juice for the clinic and elder housing. As we packed up, a woman stepped out from the clinic in scrubs, mid-40s, tired eyes. She just said, "Thank you," and handed us a warm tray of cornbread wrapped in foil. Didn't need medals. That tray said more than any speech ever could. On the ride back, Jesse's voice crackled over a speakerphone call Sarah patched through. "Did you fix stuff again, Daddy?" "Yeah, bud," I said, smiling at the sunset. "We fixed enough." 2 weeks after Summit Hollow, I was back at HQ when Langston asked me to swing by his office again. "You've made an impression," he said, motioning to a tablet. "Local paper in Summit Hollow ran a story on your team. Got picked up regionally. Now DC's asking questions, in a good way." He handed me the tablet. The headline read, "Veterans Restore Power and Hope in Forgotten Tennessee Town." There was a photo of us under the generator bay, grinning through soot and grease. Made us look like heroes. I wasn't used to that. Langston leaned forward. "We've been pushing for more funding. More programs like this. Stories like yours are proof of concept." It hit me then. What we were building wasn't just repairs and grid support. It was trust. Between veterans and their communities. Between people and the systems that forgot them. That week, I got letters. Real ones. Envelopes with shaky handwriting from places I'd never been. One from a widow in Ohio. "My son's a Marine. Reading about what you do gives me hope he'll find purpose again." One from a boy in Kansas. "I want to fix things like you when I grow up." I tacked them up beside Jesse's drawings. A wall of small reasons to keep showing up. Back at training, I was asked to mentor incoming recruits. Men and women who'd seen too much and thought they had too little left to offer. I didn't give them speeches. Just told the truth. "You're not broken. You've been repurposed." A Saturday afternoon, mild breeze rolling through Knoxville. Jesse and I were in the garage, him pretending to weld a toy spaceship while I cleaned carburetors. We were both in our rhythm when a car rolled up the drive. Not a black SUV this time, just a dusty sedan with a busted headlight. Out stepped Carl McAllister. I hadn't seen him since the day we moved. He looked older. Or maybe just more tired. He held his hat in both hands like he was carrying an apology. "Clay," he said, I was in the area. I didn't say anything. Just let him take his time. "I saw the story about you. What you're doing. I misjudged you." He paused, eyes flicking toward Jesse, who was still welding in his little plastic goggles. "I've been laid off. Shop shut down. Can't get interviews to save my life. I saw what this veteran program did for you, and I was wondering if there was room for someone like me. I looked at him, not with spite, but with clarity. The same man who once mocked me for helping a stranger now stood here, unsure, hopeful. You a vet? I asked. No, he admitted. But I work hard. Always have. I thought about what Jesse once asked, why we help people, even when they've been mean. Because helping others isn't about whether they deserve it. It's about who we are. I can't get you into our program, I said, but I can put in a word with one of our community partners. They hire tradesmen. No judgment. Just effort. Carl nodded. That'd mean a lot. As he turned to go, I added, you ever see someone on the roadside again, don't wait to help. His eyes met mine. I won't. That night, Jesse drew a picture of 2 trucks side by side, one helping the other. 1 year later, I walked through the Knoxville headquarters, now buzzing with new faces and new purpose. The program had grown, 5 new training centers, thousands of applicants. What started as a small initiative had turned into a national model. And somehow, I'd become part of the foundation. I was now a field instructor and regional lead. Still kept my hands dirty, wouldn't have it any other way, but I spent more time teaching than turning wrenches. That was fine by me. Every time I handed a tool to someone starting fresh, it felt like paying something forward. Jesse thrived too. He had friends, teachers who understood him, and a classroom where his drawings filled the walls. At a parent-teacher conference, his teacher smiled and said, Jesse tells everyone his dad makes good people. That one hit deep. One afternoon, I passed by a new wing of the facility. Fresh paint, fresh concrete. On one wall, they'd mounted a photo, the original snapshot of me, Jesse, and those 3 SUVs in front of our old place. Beneath it, a small plaque read, one action, one life, one legacy. Next to it hung a collection of patches from every state our crews had served. Puerto Rico, California, Kentucky, Alaska. All places where veterans had restored power, water, and dignity. Langston stopped beside me, nodding at the display. We tell your story not because it's rare, he said, but because it's real. He handed me a folded paper. Inside was the official announcement. I'd been named Director of Regional Operations for the Southeast. It felt surreal. Just 2 years ago, I was counting quarters at the gas station. I told him I'd think on it. That night, Jesse sat on the porch with me, stars blinking above us. You gonna say yes, Dad? He asked. I looked at him, this kid who had been my compass through every broken road and every hard day. Yeah, Bud, I said quietly. I think it's time. The morning I officially stepped into the new role, I didn't wear anything fancy. Just jeans, boots, and a clean button-down. Jesse tugged at my sleeve before I left. Don't forget your lunch, he said, handing me a brown paper bag with his crooked handwriting on the side, for the boss man. I laughed, knelt down, and gave him a hug that held more than just goodbye. It held gratitude. For sticking with me. For being the reason I kept going. Later that day, I stood on the stage in front of a group of new recruits, men and women from every walk of life. Combat engineers, communications officers, medics. Some looked nervous. Others had that wide-eyed look I'd had not too long ago. I told them my story. Not the polished one. The real one. I told them about being broke and broken. About fixing a stranger's truck on the side of the road while my own life leaked like a bad gasket. About the man who wasn't just a stranger, but someone powerful who saw more in me than I saw in myself. And how everything changed, not because I asked for help, but because I offered it first. The world, I said, won't always reward you for doing the right thing. But sometimes it does. And sometimes it hands you back more than you ever expected. There was quiet when I finished. The good kind, the kind that lets the truth settle. Afterward, a young woman from the newest class approached me. She looked unsure, but determined. My brother took his own life after the army, she said. He couldn't find his footing. I'm doing this for him. I didn't say much. Just nodded and handed her a toolkit. You'll do more than he ever knew was possible. That night, back home, Jesse asked me a question that took me off guard. Do you think Mom would be proud of us? I looked at the photos on the wall, Lena holding baby Jesse, me in uniform, then me in coveralls, grease on my face, holding a certificate with my son by my side. I think, I said slowly, she's proud every time we help someone. That was always her way too. We sat on the porch together, just like we used to. The stars were out. Crickets hummed. And for once, I didn't feel like I was waiting for life to get better. We were already living it.